everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Emma, and if you're not new here, chances are you've probably seen me do one of these videos before. Today we are going to be doing TBR Jar picks my June reads. Now if you have watched my other videos, you may have noticed that I did not do this video for May, and I've been doing this pretty consistently every month for a while. I really love doing this style of picking my TBR because I get really unexpected prompts and pick up books I might not have got to otherwise. However, in the month of May, and it is currently May as I'm filming this, I have very much been in a mood reading mood. I was starting to get a little slumped out towards the end of April, so I decided not to do a set TBR for May and just read as I please and read as my mood dictates it. And so far I'm having a great reading month. I've already had several 5-star reads, and I've already read more books this month than I do most months. So be sure to stay on the lookout for my May reading wrap up that'll get posted at the end of this month, early June. Not quite sure when that's gonna go out yet, but there will be tons of books on there. But I do love filming these videos and using this method to pick my TBR, so we're getting back into it for the month of June. I think I'm gonna do 8 prompts. I've gone back and forth between 8 and 10. I've even considered doing 6. 10 books typically tends to be a little bit too overwhelming because I will start to want to mood read throughout the month. So I think I'm gonna stick with 8. That way I can pick up other books if I'm like not in the mood for something directly on my TBR. And also, I can't believe I forgot to mention this. Do you guys notice anything different about my setup? I'll move so you can see it. I completely rearranged this bookshelf. It used to be color coordinated. I'll put a picture up here if this is your first time watching one of my videos and you don't know what it used to look like, but I'm not sure how I feel about the new setup. I will be keeping it like this for the time being because I'm moving out of my current house in a few months, so I'm gonna have to reorganize everything anyway. But if you guys would want to see like a bookshelf tour of this current setup before I move, let me know in the comments and I can be sure to film something like that for you guys. I will stop rambling on and we will get into drawing the prompts from my TBR jar. Well, I guess technically it's a TBR bag. I don't have a jar, but I use this bag for the same purposes as the jar. I have a ton of prompts in here. I'm gonna shake them up, draw all 8 prompts first, and then we're gonna find books that go along with the prompts. Okay, first prompt is a book of the month book. I'm so glad I got this one because when I first subscribed to book of the month, I did really good about reading the book for the month I got it, if that makes sense. But lately I've just gotten so behind, so there's literally a piled up list of books I need to get to from book of the month. And for the most part, every book I've ever gotten from book of the month, I've ended up loving or at least liking. So I don't know why I never get around to those, but this is great because I do need to get around to reading those soon. Also, sorry if it's noisy. The lawn guys are like mowing and landscaping right now. Also, I hope it's not interfering with the audio too much, but if you can hear it, just ignore it. Second prompt is a self-published book. I have several in mind that are really great options that I've been wanting to get around to reading, so I will definitely have something that'll work for this. Third prompt is over 400 pages. Oh my gosh. I hate prompts like this because I'm scared of long books, but I'm also glad I got it because it forces me to pick up the long books that I never gravitate towards. Prompt number 4. A book you had to read in high school. Ooh. This might call for me to have to order a book, potentially, but I'm not mad about that because I've been wanting to do something like this for a while anyway. Halfway through the prompts, our 5th one is takes place in Kentucky. I'll have to see if I have something that fits this. The reason I put this prompt in here is because I'm from Kentucky and I really want to read more Kentucky authors and more books set in Kentucky. I've only read a few, I think. And I know I have some books by Kentucky authors, but I'll have to check if they're actually taking place in Kentucky. If I can't find something that works for this, I will put this one back. 6th prompt, we have, ooh, a Friends to Lovers book. I think I've read a Friends to Lovers book this month, so I'll have to look through. Probably my contemporary romances are gonna be the best bet for finding something like this, but there might be some fantasy romances, so I'll have to look and see what the options are. 2 more prompts to go. I'm gonna grab to the bottom of the bag for this one. A book you bought recently. I already have something in mind, but I'll also look and see what my other options are. And then for our last prompt for the video, we have a book that's been adapted to TV or film. I also have one in mind for this one. So let's start looking for books that can match all of these prompts. Okay, so the first prompt that I already know what I want to do is a book that's been adapted to TV or film, although the book I'm thinking of could also work for a book I bought recently, and thankfully it's in easy reach. That book is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I purchased this book for 2 reasons. 1, because it was on sale on Amazon, and 2, because Kennedy on the I'll Read What She's Reading podcast never stops talking about this book, and I really want to know what all the hype is about. Also, if you guys don't watch or listen to that podcast, you totally should. It's 3 girls, they're hilarious, and they talk about books. Like, it's my favorite thing ever. But she's always talking about how great this book is, and I know that the TV show adaptation of it literally just got released, so I want to read this and then watch the show right after. I think that would be really fun. This is also a sci-fi book, and I'm not very well versed in sci-fi, but I recently started the Red Rising series. More thoughts to come on that series in the monthly wrap-up. I did really enjoy it, and it made me want to get into more sci-fi books, so I figured a sci-fi standalone would probably be a safe place to go. I don't really know what this is about, but from my understanding, it's about a man who wakes up in like a hospital room or something, and either he has a wife and kids that he didn't know about, or he has like recollection of having a wife and kids, and then but he doesn't, and it's sort of like a book about like all the possibilities of how your life could have gone. That probably made no sense, but that is my baseline understanding of the premise of this. But I kind of want to just go in blind, and hopefully I'm really gonna love it because this is the first book I'm adding to my TBR for June. Next, let's do a book I bought recently. I do have one on the top of my mind, but I'm gonna glance around my bookshelves really quick to see if there's anything else that could work for this. I just glanced around and there's really not that many options. The one that I had been thinking of is The Prisoner's Throne by Holly Black. This is the second book in the spin-off series in the Folk of Air world. That was a mouthful, but the Cruel Prince trilogy is one of the first fantasy series that I read when I was getting back into reading, and then recently she released a spin-off series following like side characters from the main series. I will say I've heard very mixed reviews about this, and I have mixed feelings even about the first book, but because I love the Cruel Prince trilogy so much, I simply have to continue on reading the spin-off because I love being in this world. It's so whimsical and fun. So that is option number 1. And then option number 2 kind of feels like cheating because I bought this over a month ago, but I think, and I could be totally speaking lies, but I'm pretty sure that all of the books I've bought since buying this, I've either already read or are like second or third in a series that I haven't started yet, so I can't read them. The book that I think sort of could apply to this prompt is Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This series I feel like is one of the OG internet popular series, and I've never got around to reading it. I have heard people say the first book isn't that great and that you need to push through it, that the later books are super, super good. I also know a lot of people who love the Magnolia Park series and the Boys of Tommen series also love this, and those are 2 series I love, so I feel like I would enjoy this, and I do really want to get around to reading it at some point. But since technically this is the most recent book I've purchased, I think I'm gonna go with The Prisoner's Throne for this prompt, but I'm gonna save this one and keep it over here in case I can apply it to one of these other prompts. Next prompt I'm gonna try and find is a self-published book. Now, I know I own several self-published books, and my top 2 options that I was just glancing at that are kind of more on my radar, I could be totally wrong in saying that they're self-published, so I will look it up as I'm editing this and put on here if they're not self-published. I will put what the publisher is, but I believe these are both self-published books, and that is Burned, a Daughters of Salem novel by Kelly O'Neill. She kindly sent this to me, and I do believe this is self-published, and I've been really excited to get to it because it's like a witchy YA book. And then the other one is I Keep My Visions to Myself by Mallory Smart. Once again, she was kind enough to send this to me, and I actually have started this one. I just never got around to finishing it, and it's very short, so I do want to get through this one. Don't know if it's self-published, but I do believe it is. I'm really excited about both of these, and I'm torn because this one I started and was really enjoying, and then at some point just put it down and didn't pick it back up, so I do need to get around to finishing this. But I also have been really, really excited to get to Burned. Guys, I'm really torn. I think I'm gonna put Burned on my TBR list because I may try to finish this one in the current month, because as I'm filming this, it's only like halfway through May, so I still do have time, and I think I could fly through the rest of this in like one sitting. Hopefully I will get to I Keep My Visions to Myself in the current month, and I'm going to put Burned by Kelly O'Neill on my TBR for June. We're gonna do a book I had to read for high school. Now, I do not think I currently own any books that I had to read for high school, and all of the classics I own I have read. There is a book I've been wanting to get around to reading. That's a book I had to read in high school that I absolutely hated, and I always am curious how I would feel about reading it now. And I know that it's very short as well, so even if I do hate it again, I'm not wasting that much of my time. That book is Animal Farm by George Orwell. I remember absolutely despising that book in high school, and I actually made a whole TikTok about books I had to read for high school that I disliked. And if you guys would want to watch it, I do have my TikTok linked in the description below. I think I am going to do Animal Farm by George Orwell. I know it's free on Audible, but I also may order the copy of the physical book from like Amazon or something so that I can read it this month. This is like my unique pick for the month because it's definitely not a genre that I typically gravitate towards, but I do think it would be fun to reread it and see what my thoughts are now that I'm older. So I'll be adding Animal Farm by George Orwell to my TBR for June. Moving on, let's do a book of the month book because I have a ton of options, so I'm gonna go grab them really quick. So I have a ton of books that could work for this prompt because like I said, I'm behind on reading my book of the month books. It's kind of embarrassing how many of them on my book of the month shelf are unread, but these are the three that I'm kind of gravitating more towards and are more on my radar currently that I'm interested in reading. The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer. I don't know much about this, but I've heard great reviews. A lot of booktubers that I watch have said nothing but good things about this book, and I've heard it's just like sweet and wholesome and feel good, and I do really want to read something like that. Also have A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. I don't actually remember what this is about, but one, I've heard good reviews on it, and two, I do know when I initially read the premise, I was super intrigued. Don't remember what the premise was, but I remember thinking it sounded interesting, so this is definitely a contender. The last one on my radar is The Unmaking of June Farrow. I've heard very mixed reviews about this, but I am intrigued to read it. The description of it sounds really interesting, but I think I'm gonna go with A Fate Inked in Blood just because out of these three, I think this one sparks my interest the most. Next, I think I'm gonna do the Friends to Lovers prompt, and since I kept this book over here to see if it could fit something else, I'm gonna read the back description of Addicted to You and see if this could potentially work. I feel like this might be an enemies to lovers, but I'm gonna check either way. Oh wait, I think actually this might be a Friends to Lovers. I don't want to look it up because I don't want to get spoilers, but the back does say that Lily comes as a close second to his best friend, and I know Lily and Lo are the two main characters, so I guess this is technically Friends to Lovers. If all I'm gonna do is base it off the back, it does sound like a Friends to Lovers. I could be totally wrong, but I'm gonna say that counts because I'm really excited to get to this book. We have two more prompts left to match with the book, and I think I'm gonna go for the book over 400 pages because I feel like it'll be really easy to spot what the longer books are on my shelf. There's tons of books on my shelves that are over 400 pages, but these three are ones I've been wanting to get to for a while, so I'm gonna decide between them. First option is Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco, and this is very long, which is very surprising because it is a spin-off of the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy, and those books are not crazy long. I honestly did not know that this spin-off book even existed until I saw Sarah Caroli post about it, and she said it was fantastic. Actually been hearing people say that this is better than the original trilogy, which is kind of hard for me to believe because I loved that trilogy. This has also been on my TBR a couple times before now, and I just hadn't got around to picking it up. So that is option one, and yeah, that's a hefty book. Option two is Saving Six by Chloe Walsh. I recently read the first two books, Binding and Keeping 13, in the Boys of Tommen series, and was obsessed with them. 5-star reads, and the reason I haven't got around to reading this yet is because I don't want this series to end, so I've been putting it off because I know I will binge this one and the next one and the most recent one to come out, but I do really want to jump back into this world, and I love these characters. I think I'm gonna take this one out of the running because I may try to get around to this by the end of May, and if I don't, I'll probably end up picking it up in June anyway. My last option is Daughter of No Worlds by Carissa Broadbent. I recently read all the books in the Crowns of Nyaxia series by Carissa Broadbent and loved them. Fantastic fantasy romance, and I've also heard great reviews for this series as well, and I really want to jump back into Carissa Broadbent's writing, so I don't know, and I'm torn between two fantasies, of course. Guys, I don't know what to do. I think I'm gonna go with Throne of the Fallen, only because it has been on my TBR before and I've owned it longer, so I feel like that reasoning enough should put it on my TBR, and also because I can't decide and that's the only tiebreaker I can think of. So let's do Throne of the Fallen, but once again I may get around to reading this one as well. And the last prompt is Takes Place in Kentucky. I do have a book in mind, but I believe it's nonfiction. It is, however, by a Kentucky author, so I feel like that's gonna have to count for this prompt because I literally do not own anything else. And the book I'm talking about is In Search of You by Casey Compton. I know this is like kind of a women's self-help, and I don't know if she ever references Kentucky in this, but I know she's a Kentucky author. I'm gonna cheat just a little bit and say that this book counts for the prompt, because also I have really been wanting to read this, and one of my goals has been to throw in some nonfiction to my TBR. So we're gonna go with In Search of You by Casey Compton. Now let's review the whole TBR. So obviously the one we just picked, In Search of You by Casey Compton, a women's self-help nonfiction by a Kentucky author. Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. This is a spin-off of the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy. It's YA, maybe new adult fantasy romance. I've heard that this one's a little bit spicier compared to the original trilogy, so I guess we will find out. Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I believe this is like a general fiction slash romance. Fate, Inked in Blood, one of the Book of the Month books. I know this is fantasy, not sure if it's romance, don't know if it's YA or adult. Burned by Kelly O'Neill. This is a YA witchy, self-published, I believe, book. The Prisoner's Throne. This is a YA fantasy, the second book in the spin-off series of the Cruel Prince in the Folk of Air world. Once again, I really don't know how to technically classify it, but this one. And then lastly, we have a sci-fi suspense, Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. Very excited about the lineup we have. Hopefully I will get to all 8 books. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because it would really help me out. And if you want to check out my other content, I do have my Instagram and TikTok linked in the description below. Be sure to check out the other videos I have on my channel if you're interested, and that's all for now. Bye guys!